Thank you. Welcome, everyone. My name is Sarah Crymans, and I'm an extension educator with the University of Minnesota Extension. And today we want to welcome you to our webinar, Taking the Fear Out of Finances. And our presenter today is Shannon Doyle, who is a program manager in partnerships and financial education with Lutheran Social Service. And I'm just going to read your bio, Shannon, here. She earned her degree in social work from the University of St. Kitts in St. Paul, and she joined the LSS financial counseling staff as a certified financial counselor in 2007. She's worn a variety of hats since then. She's currently, as I shared, the program manager for financial education and partnerships. And as you'll soon find out, Shannon is definitely passionate about economic opportunities for all, consumer protection, and coaching people towards financial success. So thank you for being with us, Shannon. I'm going to turn it over to you, and be sure to let Lauren, who's our regional support staff serving as a webinar producer today, let us know what you need throughout, and we'll support you here.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Sarah. And hello, everybody. I'm really happy to be here today. And some of you may know me from my workshops that I provide through our financial choice program. But today I'm here in a different capacity to speak to you through extension. So I'm super excited to be here. I do want to make sure everybody knows how to access, I'm so sorry, that went too fast. How to access closed caption if you need it. Closed caption can be helpful. Sometimes I do talk a little fast, and if you need me to slow down, I won't be offended if you click the slow down button in the reactions. I do try to make sure that I get excited about things and then I start talking really fast. The Irish comes out in me. So go ahead and you can look for the CC button at the bottom of your screen, and you'll be able to turn on those closed captions. And oh, great. Hi, Anna. Thank you for introducing yourself. I should say one other thing here is we're going to use today a tool called Mentimeter. There, you're going to see a code at the top of your screen. I just put it up here. And this allows us to participate within the workshop, and we'll be doing some polling. I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to ask you to go to another website and do a quick little survey. So we have a lot of activity that we're going to get through today. A couple other ways you can get to Mentimeter. You can click that QR code. Lauren also put the website and the code in the chat. And there is just a voting link that you can click onto, and it'll bring you right there. Now, the nice thing about Menti is there's a couple things. First of all, you can follow along the slides on whatever screen you're using. So if you open up a second browser, or if you're on your phone, so you don't have to keep switching between the visuals, but the slides, if you're on your phone, are a little hard to read. But also it keeps your answers, your questions, anything like that. You'll see that there is a Q&A, or there's, I'm turning it on right now. There's a place where you can put questions. If you have a private confidential question, you can direct message it to myself or Lauren or even Sarah. If that's okay, Sarah, I didn't ask your permission for that. Okay. Or you can throw it into Menti to keep that anonymous as well. If anybody has troubles with Menti, just throw a quick notice in the chat and we'll try to help you with that. Sarah gave me such a great introduction. I'm going to skip right past this slide and let you know just a little bit about LSS Financial Counseling. We do offer these 4 areas of service to the community in general: budget counseling and credit reviews, debt counseling, home ownership counseling, student loan repayment counseling, which, nobody's really hard to pay on those right now, but can come in some use. And then we also offer debt management plans for credit card. card debt if anyone is working with that. So how do you open both browser windows without switching back and forth? If you want to follow, you can follow along on Menti for the visual, so you don't have to switch back and forth, or that's probably the best way to do it. Or you can just bypass Menti altogether, and we can throw answers in the chat too, for sure. Yeah. So just so everybody knows, if anyone is curious in connecting with LSS Financial Counseling, if you are working with a client or for your own personal reasons, we do offer free services to the general public. 1 or 2 sessions for our general public they're free, and we do have multilingual counselors that can meet with people. If you are a University of Minnesota employee, we have a different service for you. You can actually get up to 6 free one-on-one sessions for yourself or your family members in any of the previous areas that I talked about. So if you want further information about that, it looks like Lauren posted a link to our University of Minnesota landing page, but also our general website as well. So thank you, Lauren. Okay, so our goals for today, and we got a lot of goals. Well, really just 3, but they are pretty detailed. So we're gonna start off talking about money scripts, and I'll tell you what they are, and they fall into 4 different categories, and then we'll talk about how people can combat those. We're gonna talk about financial capabilities that everybody needs to have in their lives, and then along with those capabilities, the different components for each capability. And then it'll be a review if anyone here is here for professional reasons. If you're a counselor or therapist or something like that, we're going to review listening and powerful questions. And sometimes that can be a nice review. As a person with social work background myself, it's really nice once in a while to have a refresher of all the things I learned 25 years ago in school. So we're gonna start off with a poll on Menti from all of you. And this is an open-ended question. So you can throw your answer in the chat or in Menti. But I just want to hear from you. What messages did you get about money as a child? And, messages about money come from many different places. So it could be from your parents, from your siblings, the media, your friends, your school, your faith community, and any of those places, but they really are all around us. So just take 1 minute and share with us what messages you got. And again, you can use the chat and or throw your answers in Menti, whichever is going to work best for you. Yeah, so I'm seeing a few people saying that nothing. I didn't hear anything. And then here we have a scarcity. It's not enough. It's hard to get. Money isn't everything, yet there's also never enough. Yeah, so lots of different lessons we have here. Be smart about spending. Lots of money doesn't grow on trees. So we're seeing some themes here, right? Yeah. Put money away into retirement saving. Don't spend more than you make. Credit cards are evil. Let's see. I can't see this one. I'm going to pop this up. Getting government assistance is bad. That's also a very prevalent message. It's limited, so spend wisely. Yeah, so lots of different messages, right? Some of it around scarcity, some of it around abundance, some of it about how to spend, some of it about how not to spend. But also a lot of taboos, just not talking about it at all. So this is an interesting thing when you think about it. And just for the record, I can share these answers if anyone is interested. I can share them with Sarah or Lauren afterwards. If there's a way for you to get these to people, I can absolutely share these after the workshop. And if anybody really has something that they want to say, you can also feel free to unmute yourself as well. But just best practice, if you could raise that electronic hand, that would be great too. So as we can see, there's a lot of common messages, but there's also some different messages too. Some of them are practical, some of them are emotional, some of them, boil down to platitude, right? Money doesn't grow on trees. Penny saved is a penny earned, things like that. So we are always constantly getting messages about money, whether we realize it or not. And great. Okay, so you can send additional information. Great. So these messages over time turn into money scripts that we just sort of internalize and really aren't even often aware of them. So they're unconscious beliefs about money that we have learned, yes, in childhood, but also throughout our lives. And surprisingly, they can be responsible for our financial outcomes. So a lot of times they guide our financial decisions, right? They can be used heuristically. I always have a hard time with that word. um, and they are associated with financial behavior, your level of income, your net worth, and even your level of debt and some other aspects of financial health. So what are the money scripts? Well, they kind of fall into 4 different areas. We can see there's money worship, which is that old, money is the key to happiness. Anything can be solved with money. You can never have enough money or enough things, right? And maybe not surprisingly, this is the most common money script in America. The higher people with money worship beliefs or scripts, the higher they associate with this script, the more debt they might tend to carry, and sometimes the lower their net worth as well. So all of these different areas, just also so you know, they have both positives and negatives to them. Although sometimes it may sound mostly negative, which I hate to say, but none is better than the other. They all have pros and cons to each. So money status, people with these scripts, they really link their self-worth with their net worth. If I'm good, if I work hard, I'll be rewarded. But sometimes with money status, they may prioritize outward appearances of wealth. And they tend to sometimes spend more than they can afford, might be prone to gambling, and frequently may be financially dependent on others, or may hide spending from their significant other. And this one, money status can be tied to socioeconomic, can be tied to a socioeconomic status. Sometimes, frequently, it's lower income households or those households that gave a higher social standing to those with money, right? So basically, money status means if you have money, you're good. If you don't, you're not. And then we have money vigilance. And people who are money vigilant, who have this script, this belief, they are really focused on financial health. They're the penny saved is a penny earned kind of people. They really focus on saving, but also don't expect any financial windfalls or winning the lottery, because that's not going to happen. They also believe that people need to work for their money and not be given handouts. They're very unlikely to carry debt. They really only try to spend what they afford, and they love a value or value a bargain. But the downside of money vigilance is that they can also be really anxious about financial futures, even extremely so that they won't spend money. So these are your extreme savers, right? If you think of the spectrum, we have our big, huge spenders, which would be money worship, money status. And then on the other end, we have the money vigilance. Not really sure where money avoidance is going to fall on our spectrum, because money avoidance tends to think money is bad. I don't deserve to be wealthy. And sometimes, surprisingly, this is also associated with people who are wealthy and highly educated. But if somebody has very high scores in this area, it could suggest a belief that money is so bad that they may go as far as to believe that they don't deserve it. They may sabotage their own financial success. They carry negative ideas about wealth and having money, and they frequently give money away. Also, they might ignore their financial statements, overspend, or use their money to help others before they help themselves. So, four different general areas. So I want you all to take a moment, and I know it can be difficult to go toggle to yet another website, but if we can just take 1 minute, and even if you want to go with, if you don't want to take the quiz right now, that's fine too. But after I've given those descriptions, you may already be thinking, I think I know where I fall. But if you want to take the quiz, let's give people a minute to do that as well. If you're just kind of not sure, because sometimes they all might sound like you, right? Or oh, this sounds a little bit like me, but that sounds a little bit like me. Um for the record too, I said that most Americans fall into money worship. Most people money avoidance frequently makes up people in the helping fields, which I found to be very fascinating, because in my life, I have had many scripts of money avoidance. I think that I've kind of, the messages I've gotten have gone between vigilance and worship, or sorry, avoidance and worship, and I had to work really hard to learn how to be more vigilant, right? And so you're not going to be stuck with these scripts all your life, but it's important to become aware of where you fall. All right. So we have a unique crowd here because we so far don't have anyone in the money worship area. And most you overwhelmingly identify with money vigilance. So very interesting. But here's the thing about helping others build financial health. And I'm going to open this for just a minute more in case anyone is taking that quiz and wants to throw in their script or belief. But the thing about helping people build financial wealth, just like mental health, chemical health, physical health, or any other wheel or any other of those areas on the wheel of wellness, it's really difficult to help others if we don't have our own house in order, or if we don't even know what our own money beliefs or scripts are. So, talking about money scripts is a piece of the puzzle to explore financial disease with your clients, and to start, it's helpful to know what yours is, right? What your script is. Right, it looks like we have about 18 people who've completed here, and it's okay. We're gonna move on, but if you, after this, if you're still taking that quiz and you wanna throw in the chat what you came up as, that's great too. So this is kind of interesting because before I learned this, I know, you would wonder oftentimes, like, why do we do the things we do with money? And this is a big part to do with it. So regardless of what area, and actually U of M Extension has a similar sort of quiz. It's the money color wheel. In case you're familiar with that, it's along the same idea as this. So there are some helpful actions that can be taken for each different money script, as you can see on the screen. And this is actually research that was done by Brad Klontz, who does a lot of behavioral health research, and just financial capabilities, financial psychology, things like that. So if you are working with someone, or if you yourself are someone who falls into that money worship category, it can be really important practicing gratitude. Besides the steps listed here, practicing gratitude can be huge, as far as getting away from that thinking that money is going to solve my problems, right? And I think we all can fall into that idea every once in a while. But another huge tool that people that have this money script can use is a cooling off period to avoid those impulse purchases and buyer's remorse too, which I think no matter what money script you have, we've all experienced buyer's remorse at some point, right? But practicing gratitude really does challenge the idea that money leads to happiness, right? Because if you can refocus yourself on what you already have, then it's really about wanting what you have, right? With money status, really, again, I mean, gratitude helps with this one as well. But talking to somebody, whether it's a mental health professional or a financial professional, about spending, finding ways to change the spending habits. Money status people might also be really, really hard workers. See, so that's not all bad, but it's also sometimes they could fall into that. The work addict sort of thing. And so seeking balance between work and the striving for wealth and success and relationships can be really helpful in that area as well. With money vigilance, actually, they need to learn to be able to spend a little more and to let go of some of that anxiety about. So it might sound funny to say to somebody, you need to practice spending money, but I in my 13 years of working with people one-on-one before I was managing, uh, it was something that I would have to talk to people about sometimes. Hey, your spending or your saving is great. You can let go a little and have some fun, right? And really owning that success. Wow, you've done a great job. You've saved, you don't have debt, or you have very little debt. You are all on the right track. So learning how to celebrate those successes too. And then with money avoidance, it's really about creating new habits, opening the mail every Friday or whatever day of the week, maybe not Friday. How about Monday? But picking a day of the week when you're going to open the mail, picking a couple days of the month when you're going to review your spending, make sure all those bills are paid. And then really creating a positive mantra, right? Like a lot of us, money avoidance might show up like I'm terrible at math or I'm horrible with money, things like that. And so rephrasing those to actually, I can be good with money. I like yesterday, I made a really good spending decision when I didn't, buy something that I wanted to, or I made a really good spending decision because I bought something very intentionally. Once again, it's focusing on the strengths and the success with that. I just want to stop because we're going to move into a different sort of focus for a minute. But does anybody have comments or thoughts about or questions about the money scripts or beliefs? Okay, great. Great. I will move on. All right. Um, so let's talk a little bit about financial capability and how we build it. So once again, I said it's really hard to help people if you don't have your own house in order. So when we are working with others, thinking about financial capability, this is a very, very good, precise textbook definition of financial capability, right? It's the ability to acquire resources and then evaluate and apply positive financial decisions through the lifespan in order to develop financial security. I mean, that's kind of a mouthful, right? But in other words, it's just the ability to to earn income and make positive decisions about what you do with it over your lifetime. So, and also, I have a saying that I like to say, it is about it is about the idea that we don't manage money, we manage our choices about money. So it's really all about decision making and decision making skills, right? So that's a lot simpler put, than when you think about it that way. And instead of maybe this very textbook definition. But however, there are specific areas that everybody needs to have capabilities in. Um, they happen to be goal setting, maximizing income, spending, saving, borrowing, and protecting. So these are the building blocks for personal finance. They apply to individuals across the lifespan and socioeconomic categories. As you may have guessed, they are ever evolving because of that. So they change as our life needs, as our life requires. Maximizing income is going to look very different for a person in their 20s than it will be for those in their 80s. Protecting is going to look different for those with children as opposed to those without, right? So this is what puts the personal in personal finance. So I think that here in this context, goal setting is pretty self-explanatory, but I do like to point out that there's two types of goals that can be used with financial capabilities. If somebody that you're working with or you yourself are looking for a more transactional type of goal, then SMART goals can be really great to use. But if you're working maybe with somebody who is money avoidant, or even money status, money worship, the people who tend to maybe overspend, um, then you might want to be working with them more on habit building or a more transformative goal, like so something that falls into a learning goal, like, oh well, so it seems like you're overspending a lot, maybe you need to track your spending, right? Or talking about the emotions that are behind impulsive spending and things like that. So learning about those things can even be really powerful goals and can help people create new habits over time. And then I just want to say spending, saving, and borrowing, they're all pretty, straightforward. But maximizing income sometimes can be a little confusing just because it's, well, not confusing, but I just want to define exactly what it is, because yes, it's about making the most of the income available at the time, right? So that's really using a budget and things like that, but also exploring ways to increase that income through experience or education. Sometimes it's about applying for public benefits as needed, or taking advantage of private benefits that are offered by an employer. So it's going to look different for everybody. But it's not just about making the most absolute income that you can make. It's just, really making good decisions about what you have at the time, and then finding ways, if you need to increase it in the future. And then with these 6 capabilities, there are 4 different components for each capability. And those components are knowledge, action, influences. Well, actually, I should start with influences. So, because really influences are behind a lot of the other components here, right? So it's influence, knowledge, action, and access. And we really need to have all 4 in place under each of the capabilities to really be maximizing our financial skills. And I find this really interesting. The one thing that has always popped out on this scale for me, and this is taken from the University of Wisconsin Extension Program in their family financial education. But the one thing I find really fascinating here is we hear a lot of focus in in our culture, our country, about financial literacy, right? Oh, we have to teach financial literacy, but when you look at this, that is just 1/4 of what really needs to be going on. So yes, people need to have knowledge. We need to know what positive money management is, need to know where to go and what to do, very, very important. But if you have that knowledge, but you don't understand your influences, it can be really difficult to take appropriate action. What are you going to do with that financial knowledge? Is your behavior, is it going to match your knowledge? So really learning about those influences and access, while it talks about, does a person have access to financial services? This is the area where we really have to start focusing on, you know, uh, geographical discrepancies, or disparities, especially when we're thinking about, different areas of the city where there's less access than in a poor neighborhood, and more access. And do people have access to um, affordable housing? Do they have access to fair and affordable loans and credit opportunities, things like that? So it's all part of that spectrum. And of course, efficacy in all 6 of the capabilities requires identifying and using all these different components too. Any thoughts about that? I'm going to check in. Yes, absolutely. In histories of racial discrimination. Absolutely. Yep. I'm going to check in because I'm seeing some comments here. I want to make sure there's no questions. Brian says, you think vigilance is really important, but maybe praised a bit too much in our society? Yes. Less focus on helping our community with our excess resources and more on accumulating for yourself. Absolutely. And, each of those also fall into a value perspective as well. Whereas, you are right that money vigilance is what we all strive for. We're taught that that's the ideal way to be with our money. And I think, like I said before, there's plus and minus to all of them. There's pros and cons for all of them. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. Oh yeah, there are so many different podcasts with finances. Um, yeah, there's Dave Ramsey, there's Claude Coward. Yeah, there's just so many of them. There's some great ones that I love too. One of them is called, well, that's uncomfortable. And it's where they actually have discussions about really uncomfortable money topics. So that's one of my favorites too. But yeah, so many good podcasts. Thank you for sharing those. Okay, so I just want to take a look at an example of how these capabilities and components can work together. So if we're looking at setting goals, right? So we can look at the knowledge would take values and emotions, understanding differences between wants and needs, decision making. Decision making is so important. And, how do people make decisions? How do you make decisions? And then, of course, positive communication skills, especially, if somebody is trying to work with another person to come up with their setting goals, and I don't mean a professional, I mean like a spouse or a partner, or helping maybe a teenage or adult child setting some of those goals, right? Of course, the action piece is, being able to, once again, talk about it and create a written plan. Having access, you need those financial tools, right, for budgeting and saving, which can be as simple as a piece of paper or pencil. And or as high tech as an app. There's a whole spectrum of different tools, but also having the means to reach your goals. If somebody's goal is to save for their child's college, do they have access to a 529 account? Do they even know what a 529 account is? And do they have the income to contribute? Those sorts of things. And then again, focusing on those influences. And the same with maximizing income and protecting things. With maximizing income, you have to know how much you earn. And you would be surprised how many people don't know how much comes into their household in a month. And I have to admit that a few months ago, I even had to take another look at it because, incomes change. So our incomes are not the same. My husband and I, they're not the same that they were 3 years ago. So I had to update that. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, wow, that's really different than where I thought it was. So if you haven't looked at that in a while, it's a good thing to look at. You know, and with some people, especially a younger person, maybe we have to talk about the difference between gross and net pay, right? Because they're always going to get those taxes, right? And then maybe for a younger person just starting out in their professional world, talking about the value of benefits and how important it is to select the right ones. So, but if we stop at knowledge, you know, that's not going to help them understand how their paycheck, you know, where to find information on their paycheck. Are my deductions correct? You know, how do I negotiate salary? You know, these are all the things you need to know to put this knowledge into place. And then, of course, you have to have that access to even just knowing what the average wage is in your field, having that information, right? You have to have transportation to the job. There has to be a good job market. There's so many different factors when we look at it. If we just stop at the knowledge or the financial literacy piece, we're really doing short service to people and to ourselves too. So you know, I'm going to move on. I wanted to do a exercise here, but I can see that we're running. We're just getting a little close to the end, and I want to make sure we have time for any questions or things like that. But really quickly, if anybody has some ideas, like if you have, you know, pick one of these, and is it spending, saving, or borrowing? What knowledge do people need to have? What action? What access and what influences? And maybe if we just take one answer for each of these, if you want to unmute yourself, and then we'll move on. Any brave souls out there wanting to do that? Yeah. For spending, they could do a price comparison of eating out versus grocery shopping. For action, yes, absolutely. Okay, well, that's fine if that's fine. But if you feel like you want to like think about that later, these can be really good areas to think about all the different four components. Oh, what areas can help in investing? Well, okay. So that would fall under saving, right? So first, this is a really good example. So with investing, you're going to have a knowledge of how compound interest works, right? That's an important knowledge. You need to have a knowledge of the different types of accounts, that's investments. You do have to go back to your goals, to setting goals, because you also, which would be an action. Uh, one second, Lindsay, and I will. So you go back to setting goals, and that would be an action, and then access. Well, you have to have access to those accounts, right? First, you have to know that they even exist. Is your goal? Is it a midterm? You know, is a short-term goal? Within 5 years or less? Is it a midterm goal, 5 to 10 years, or is it a long-term goal, 10 or more, right? And then, you know, do you have access to the types of accounts? Let's go back to, like, say, the college account. Do you have access to a 529 account? Do you have access to the income that you would need to put into that account? You know, and then influences, of course, are going to be your values, your different things that may influence your ability to save or that habit. Do you have that habit? So that's a quick breakdown of that for investment, but there's definitely not a complete breakdown. And Lindsay, were you asking about a zero-based budget that can be created in Excel? Okay, so zero budgeting is really where the idea there is you give every dollar a job. So it's a system, it's a type of budgeting system. So basically you get paid, you say, what do I need my paycheck to do for me from this pay period to the next pay period, and then you budget until you have given every dollar a job and said this is where they're going to go. But oh, Marcus did it even a little more, gave another more detailed description there. Okay, so I'm going to move on. Oh, unless there's a question. Oh yeah. If you don't mind, Victor, I'm going to hold off on that until the end because that is a great question. Okay, so I just want to do this quick review here of just financial stressors that are out there, and then the listening and powerful questions. And this is really more geared towards professionals, but quite honestly, you can use this in your personal life too. And I think you'll see how in just a minute. But first, I just want to say that according to a study that was completed by FINRA, which is the Financial Industry Regulatory Agency, Americans were stressed about money even before the pandemic, right? In 2018, 19,000 adults were surveyed, and it was found that, well, 60% indicated feeling anxious when thinking about their personal finances, and 50% reported feeling stressed when discussing their personal finances. So stop and think about that for a moment. Almost the same number of people feel stressed when talking about their finances as those who are stressed by just thinking about it. So if talking about finances is as stressful as thinking about it, how do you even start that conversation, right? Also, I just want to point out too that 65% of women indicated feeling stressed about personal finances compared to 54% of men. Major factors contributing to high levels of stress were lack of assets and insufficient income, high debt, money management challenges, and low financial literacy. People with high financial anxiety were more likely to have past due bills or for the treatment of a health problem. In fact, they noted that for most focus group participants, the pandemic exacerbated existing financial anxiety rather than creating new anxiety. And I don't think that that's really all that surprising, but I do think it's more affirming to what, at least in my industry, we really have seen as far as financial stress goes. So what do you do? Well, you could start by offering them dessert, right? I mean, chocolate always helps me, but not really. Seriously, though, when people are struggling with financial issues, it can be really difficult to bring it up. There's a lot of shame, there's a lot of embarrassment, there's a sense of failure sometimes. And I've learned all of this over, 13 years of working with people one-on-one. Oftentimes it presents as people making appointments and then not showing up or rescheduling at the last minute. And it would take them 3 or 4 times before they actually showed up for that first appointment. So they know something's going on. They know they want to make a change. It's hard to take those first steps, right? Um, and then and then when they would show up, sometimes they would withhold information or break down crying with release and sometimes relief of just knowing, someone was listening. And oftentimes, again, this behavior is just due to that shame, that embarrassment, that fear of, looking at everything that's going on, but also having to make a change. People really feel a sense of deep personal failure and shame when their finances are in trouble. So if you're here for a professional reason, I think it's important to just bear that in mind. You've probably witnessed that in your own practice. But I always say, one of the things I would always say to my clients is, how are you supposed to be successful at this if nobody has ever explained this to you, if you've never been taught, or if you've only been given the knowledge piece, but not the other, action, if no one's ever helped you with the action or understanding your influences, or if you don't have access, right, to the tools that you need to be successful. Um, and sometimes just hearing that from somebody can be really helpful. But I wouldn't be able to find out anything if I wasn't practicing focused listening, right? So the good news is that when people are feeling stressed, and if you are a professional, you're probably already doing this, right? But if you're not, if you're here for personal information, it's really important to think about how you are listening to you. Because when people are stressed, it's important for them to feel heard. Um, and I, and I just really have to reemphasize that. We can listen. We do it all the time. I am guilty of this myself. That internal listening, where you're just kind of thinking, maybe you're talking with your spouse or your partner about money, and you're like, oh, I can't wait to say this next thing. I really have to, I am gonna say this, and I'm gonna just lay it out there, or you're kind of listening, but maybe you're on your phone answering something, or this is where it's really easy to be distracted by our own thoughts, our own preconceived notions. Oh my gosh, you always overspend. Why do you always overspend? And when you're thinking those things, you're not listening to the other person, right? So it's hard to get into this practice, but practicing focused listening, when you're really listening for facts, for patterns, for themes, the values of what someone else is talking about, their emotions. It's important to pick up on what the other person, if it's not a client, if it's a person in your life, it is really important to pick up even on what they're not saying. That can be really hard, but it's impossible if you're not really listening to them. And then if you even want to go a step further, you can focus on that global listening, where you're even trying to pick up on the verbal, nonverbal messages, or what is their energy, or did you just see an attitude shift when you said something? Maybe there's something going on in the room that is affecting that too. So most important thing is to really try to hone in and listen. Give that other person your full attention. Here are some things that you can listen for. You can listen for emotions, right? Are they expressing fear, sadness, failure, resignation, anxiety? Are they talking about values? Can you listen for values? What is most important to them? Do they talk a lot about family? Do they talk about freedom? Do they talk about fear or security or connection? Where are those values showing up? Sometimes people might be talking about their inner strengths without even realizing it, their character strengths. Are they showing courageous? Are they showing resiliency? Are they aware of their situation, or are they, in denial of it? Of course, that's not an inner strength. That would be more of a self-imposed barrier, but really listening for where are they at, and what resources do they have? Do they talk about having a good job? Do they have, good connections? Do they have support? Do they have time to really deal with things? So many different things you can listen for. Self-imposed barriers. How is this person? How do they get in their own way? How do you get in your own way? We all do it sometimes. Are they avoiding responsibility? Are they too busy? Is that creating a barrier? Do they put up barriers, like, oh, I can't get a second job because this or that, or, oh, I can't pay down my debt. I can't close my credit card accounts because of this, just a couple examples, but or are there missing resources? Do they have a lack of access? Are they not aware of their influences? Do they not have the knowledge, right, of those different components of financial capability? So if you're listening to all this and somebody gets stuck, There is no such thing as a right or wrong question in any situation, right? But the best question is one that neither you nor the client knows the answer to, right? So, and that is a powerful question, and they can help deepen anyone's understanding about what's important to them and why. But as a listener, it can help you deepen your understanding of where the other person is coming from. So, yes, it can help somebody get unstuck and move closer to their goal, sometimes even their own solution. But it can also, like I said, help you to form a better understanding of where that other person is coming from, especially if you're talking to, a partner, a spouse, an adult child, a friend, or another family member. So, powerful questions are short. They're 7 to 10 words. They start with what or how. They can also start with who, where, when, but you want to avoid why. And it's also really important to focus on the person, not the problem. Right. So in this case of finances, let's say somebody needed to increase their income. And so they get a second job. And the very first thing you might ask, if you're talking to a client or a child, how much does the second job pay? I mean, yes, that's an important question, and it seems like it should be a powerful question because it's a how, but maybe refocusing it to when you refocus it to what is that second job going to do for you? That's focusing more on how is that going to help that person as opposed to how it's going to help the problem of not enough income. It's a subtle difference, but does anybody want to throw in the chat why they think why should be avoided? If you want to go ahead and do that, I'm going to move on. And yes, that's exactly it. Nail on the nose right there. Why makes people feel defensive, and it can carry judgment. It's like, I need you to tell me why you did that. You need to own up to this. You have to justify it. So really staying away from why. Try it in your own life. It really makes a huge difference. But really, the other thing you want to do is avoid some of these common mistakes, right? First of all, though, like I said just on the previous screen, you don't have to worry about finding the perfect, powerful question, right? Don't let the enemy be, or wait, don't let good be the enemy of perfect, right? Or no, wait, that goes, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. I'm sorry, I'm always bad at those things. So on the surface, a lot of these mistakes, they may seem like innocent, even normal ways to ask questions, but they do tend to shut down the idea process that so it can stall the conversation. um, and some of these mistakes might seem familiar, like looking for the best possible question, asking leading questions, right? Or offering forced choices. But just coaching a third party, that's what I just talked about on the other page, is basically focusing on the problem, not the person. And a never ending question is one of those questions that take a big buildup, right? It's oh, okay, well, I'm going to explain this question to you just so that, I want to make sure you know where I'm coming from. And then, then it's a big buildup to this question. Or if you're thinking out loud before you ask a question, I'm really guilty of that because I'm an extrovert. Or if you ask stacking questions, it can feel really overwhelming. But in the end, don't worry too much about making these mistakes, because if you do, the other person you're talking with is definitely going to let you know. So just go back to listening, reframe the question, and move forward. Okay, I was going to do a practice session with you, but we are right at 6 minutes before. So I just want to sum up and then go back to any questions or comments that we have. So just in summary, when you're trying to take the mystery, the fear out of finance, really focusing on those influences, understanding the money scripts, and how they influence the attitude and behaviors around money, really important. but also remember that everybody has strengths and everybody has growth areas, within their financial capabilities. And they're going to change. Those strengths and growth areas are going to change throughout your lifetime. And so just recognizing that as well. And really, practicing that listening. I think practicing listening, especially when it comes to a topic as emotionally charged as money can be, especially in our personal lives, but even in a professional setting, practicing that global listening and using those powerful questions, especially staying away from why, can really help move you and the person that you're talking with about finances to a different place, a new understanding or awareness. And there is help out there. I just want everyone to know there is help out there. And LSS Financial Counseling is one agency that does this. There are other agencies out there that do similar things. They can be found at nfcc.org. And also, believe it or not, the Minnesota Attorney General's website has fantastic information about protecting people and filing complaints against anybody who has offered or scammed someone or been fraudulent. And the Department of Commerce is a great place as well. That help can be found for people. Okay, one last quick poll if you want to answer it before we end today, but how will you use the information you learned today? And please open it up to questions if anybody wants to unmute. I think there was one that I was going to go back and answer. Yeah, transitioning from vigilance to spending can be really tough. You spend so many years on a tight budget to manage your top priorities: security, educating your kids, housing, retirement. Yeah. The kids are on their own and you're retirement age, but you still hesitate to spend on the things you're saving to do in retirement. This is hard. It's a hard question to answer because it is not a one size fits all answer, right? So maybe what I would recommend, though, if I were working with someone in this, what I have done in this situation is say, start small. Think of a small thing that you've been saving for that you've always been wanting to do, and give yourself permission to do that. And remember, though, that as you go, you are going, even once you retire, your investments are still going to be working for you, right? They're still going to go up and down. They'll still be invested. And so you'll more than likely still be earning money. So it doesn't mean, go on a huge spending spree, but really start small. Give yourself permission to spend that in a fun way. And then maybe, talk with your spouse or partner about how that went. And then kind of, trying something bigger the next time. So moving with baby steps, that's about as general as I can get with that without knowing your full situation. But yeah, I think it really takes some smaller steps to get there. I hope that was helpful. All right. Any other questions that anybody has? Looks like Lauren just posted the evaluation. And here's information about getting a certificate of participation. And it looks like to get the points, you complete the webinar evaluation using the link. That was just posted. Oh, good, Victor. Thank you. Good. I'm glad that was helpful.
Thank you so much, Shannon. I so appreciate it. And there we go. As she indicated, Lauren has put the evaluation link in the chat, and we will be sending a follow-up email. And so Shannon, if you have any things you want us to include in that, we will do that. This webinar is being recorded, and you will be able to find it in the near future on our U of M Extension Center for Family Development YouTube channel. We'll be sharing that. We do have several other webinars coming up. We'll go to the next slide, and there is a barcode there as well. This will all be in the follow-up email. So be sure to check out any of those additional emails or webinars that are coming up. And then I think we might have one more slide there at the end. Oh yes, we just invite you to become social with us on social media. We'll include those in the follow-up email. But I think maybe one more slide. We have our bookend slide there coming up perhaps. Thank you, Shannon, so much for being with us today. It was just delightful to have you sharing this great information, and thank you everyone for participating. We'll hang out here just a bit to see if anyone has any questions as well, but thanks everyone for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was my pleasure to be here.